The Mishnah, so Be'ez Hashem, today's daf is Masechta Bava Metzia daf Kuf Yud Beis, and we're going to begin from the first third of that down of Kuf Yud Beis Amid Aleph, Aim aside. We're discussing over here the Isser of Loisolim Pu'ulas Sachir Itcha Ad Boiker, and that is one of the lavim that we discussed yesterday. Here it is on the screen here. Loisashik Esriachav Loisigzvo Loisolim Pu'ulas Sachir Itcha Ad Boiker. So the Torah gives you a number of isurim that you must pay an employee on time. Okay, so that is the isur. And then and this appears in Vayikra and also appears in Devar. Hi, Louis. We just began first third of the page on Kuf Yud Beis Amud Aleph. Okay, hold on. Hi, Sheldon. We also just began, and we're on Kuf Yud Beis Amud Aleph 112. And just to remind you that the topic today, again, is discussion of the issue of paying the worker on time. So we said yesterday that if you have a worker and he worked for you during the daytime, so the Torah says that you get the grace period of the nighttime to pay him. So basically, you have to pay him till you have time to pay him. If he worked for you in the daytime, you must pay him by sunrise of the next day. And if he worked for you overnight, so then you have the whole day until sunset of the next day to pay him. And these are two different isurim. That's one pasuk says that you have to pay him during the daytime, and one pasuk says that you must pay him at the nighttime. So it depends when he worked for you. If he worked for you for the day, you pay him. You have time to pay him. The grace period is for nighttime, and if he worked for you at night, the grace period is for the daytime. Now, all this, so the Gemara, the Mishnah said, Amasai, when are you over all these averas? Bisman shetavoy. It means that the worker requested, pay me. I just finished the job, he paid you. Then you have to pay him during the grace period. But loy tavoy, but if he didn't request the money, he didn't make a formal request for payment, Eino over olav, you don't get the avera. And that makes perfect sense. Sometimes a worker doesn't want to get paid right away because he might lose the money. So he says, hold up, if I'm paying me. So then you're not over the Avera. Tana Rabbanan, the rabbis taught, Loisolim Pu'ulas Socher. You're not allowed to overnight the wages of an employee. So the Gemara says, Yochel, I would have thought, Afilu Loit Va'oi. Even if the employee did not request for the money, the Isser is holding back the wages if by your will. That means the employer wants to hold on to the money for an extra day. So then, if the employee is demanding the money, then you'll get the avera of loisoolun pula sochia. But if the employee is not demanding the money, then the reason why it's by you, it's not because you want it there. It's because the employee is also wants you to hold on to it. So then you're not over the avera. Now, there's another drasha from this pasuk. Yochel, I would have thought, afila einloi. Let's say the employer doesn't have cash. I would think that he would be over the avera of loisalin. And what does that mean? That means that he would, if you have to employ employee, you would have to sell, let's say, your metaltalim, your movable items, or sell anything, your clothing, just to you have cash to pay the worker. I might think that you have to do that. Only when it's with you. In other words, only when you have cash to pay him and you're withholding that payment against the will of the employee, then you get the avera. But if you don't have cash, then you don't get the avera, and you still don't have to sell. So you really, even though you would say you're not an oinus, Hashem should make sure that you should sell your movable items so you'll have money to pay. That's a midas chasidus. That's going above and beyond. The law is that only if you have cash to pay and you don't pay, that's when you get the avera. Yochel, I would have thought, even if the owner, the employer, transferred the payment to a storekeeper. Let's say the employee wants to get paid, so the employer goes to the grocery store with the employee and says, "Listen, this employee wants to get paid. Let him take food from your grocery store, and I'll pay you back, Mr. Grocery Man." So now he transferred. So himcho means he transferred the payment to the employee to the storekeeper or the banker. So if the storekeeper or the banker didn't pay, let's say the storekeeper didn't pay him, the employee, on time, or he closed his shop or whatever. So I would think that now the employer gets the avera. Talmud loymar, pasuk says itcha. Um, we are in Kuf Yud Beis Amud Aleph. By the way, Kuf Yud Beis Amud Aleph, like 1/3 down the line, 1/3 down the way. We're almost up to Ibaylahu. So Talmud loymar itcha. We're not talking about that you transferred the right to pay, the responsibility to pay to the shopkeeper or to the banker. It's only if you're the employer, you have money, and you don't pay on time, you get the avera. But if you transfer the responsibility to pay to a shopkeeper, the shopkeeper should pay the employee via letting him take food for free. So then, if the shopkeeper didn't pay the employee on time, nobody gets the avera. The shopkeeper didn't hire him, and the employer he transferred the responsibility to pay to the shopkeeper. Now the Gemara says like this: if you don't get the avera, they asked the question. Okay, let's say the employee agreed that the employer should transfer the responsibility to pay to the shopkeeper. And he goes into the shop and he doesn't like anything there or whatever. He went into the shop. Now, but he agreed that the transfer of the responsibility to pay should be on the shopkeeper. Can he change his mind? That's the question. The question is chayzer. Can he now change his mind and go after the employer, saying, you know what, I don't want to take my money from the shopkeeper? Or no, he has to keep up the deal. So Rav Sheshes Rav Sheshes says you can't go back. Once you agree that the employer could transfer the responsibility to pay to a shopkeeper, you can't go back on that deal. Rabba says you can go back on that deal. And you can't say, listen, I made a mistake. I shouldn't have agreed that you can transfer your responsibility to pay me to a storekeeper. I don't like anything in the store. Rabba said, who says you can't transfer, where do I know this from? So Midiktani, since our Mishnah says that once the responsibility is transferred, Eina Oiver Olav, the employer doesn't get any Avera. So we say you don't get any Avera. Miva hu Over, you don't get the Avera of Loisolim. But Hami Hadar, but the employee can change his mind and say, hey, I want you to pay me. In other words, there's no more loisolin because he made the transfer of responsibility to pay. But that gives the right to the employee that he never gave up the right that if he changes his mind, he could still say, I want the employer to pay me. I don't want to take the money from a store. Rav Sheshes says you can never change your mind. My Eina Oiver, and what does the Mishnah say? You don't get the Aveira anymore. Eina Mataris Laver. That means you don't have any dinim to be able to get Aveira. In other words, it's the employer, when he transferred the responsibility to pay to the storekeeper, that means he doesn't have any responsibility, no money, and it can never be undone. So it can never lead to a possibility of loisolin, plus there is no responsibility anymore. Now the Gemara asks, okay, we're up to the last third of the daf of Kuf Yud Beis Amud Aleph. Boyamine Rav Sheshes. They asked a question for Rav Sheshes. Till now, we're dealing with an employee, let's say an hourly employee. What happens, kablonis, let's say somebody who's a contractor. Let us say somebody is took wool from somebody to make a suit. Okay? He's a contractor to make a suit for the raw products that you give him. So, do you have when he calls you and says, okay, your suit's ready, and you don't pay him on time, right? You, the owner of the wool, and you don't pay the tailor on time, do you get the avera of mishum baltalin? Do you get the avera of not paying somebody on time? Or you do not get the avera of baltalin? What is this machlekes all about? Uman, if a contractor koina b'shvach keli, does he really own the improvements of the product? In other words, when you give wool to a tailor to make a suit, When he makes that suit, so he took the wool and turned it into a suit. So now, really, who owns that suit until the tailor gets paid? It's the tailor that owns that suit. And believe it or not, even though he didn't pay for the wool, but he already made improvement on that wool to make a suit of it. So he technically owns that suit. And therefore, let's give it an example. The tailor could be Mekadesh a woman with that suit because it's his suit. But the owner of the wool still owes the tailor money for making the suit, and therefore he's the owner of the wool, would be required to pay the tailor to get his suit. So it's semi the tailor's, but it's still considered like to the a loan to the owner of the wool until he pays for it. And therefore, when you delay paying a loan, there's no avera of loisolin on that. So therefore, there would not be an avera of loisolin. Or would you say the opposite? Really, the tailor does not own that suit. And really, he's just a hired worker for the owner of the wool, uschirasi, and that's just hiring a tailor to make your suit, even though he's not an hourly worker, but he was hired to make a suit. And therefore, if you don't pay him on time, you get an avera. So that's the question. Amar lehu Rav Sheshes. Rav Sheshes said that was the question of Rav Sheshes, and Rav Sheshes is over. You do get the avera of not paying a tailor on time because we paskin ain't uman kainim shvachki that the tailor does not own the suit. Says the Gemara of Tanya, we learned in a brisa ain't over. We learned in a brisa that says that when you don't pay a tailor on time, you don't get the avera of baltolin. And says the Gemara, Hasam, that brisa is talking about shimko eitzel chenvemi eitzel shulchani. That the reason why you don't get the avera is that the owner of the wool said to the tailor, "You could come. I'm transferring the responsibility to pay to my storekeeper, so you can get your payment from my storekeeper. So for my grocery store man. So since he transferred the responsibility to pay, so that's therefore in that second brisa it says you don't get the avera baltolim, but really." If it wasn't for that, he would get the avera baltolim because ein unman koinem b'shvach kli, and it's like any hired worker where you have the avera to pay them on time. Says the brisa, name a messiah. Let us bring a proof to this. Another brisa says hanoisin talisay leumem, and somebody gives his like talis to a worker. Gomrai vahidia. And he finished it, and he called him up on the phone. He says, "I finished repairing your talis." For some reason, for 10 days, the first 10 days, you don't get the avera of baltolim. I'm not sure why, because I'm not sure you should get the avera of baltolim, not like Rav Sheshes, but I guess the first 10 days is you don't get the avera of baltolim. But because we don't consider the job complete until you transfer the talis back to its owner. But nasonaloi b'chatzeyoim, let's say you transfer the talis to the owner, let's say at 12 o'clock during the day, so then he has to pay you right away. But once the sun set on that day, and you already gave the owner of the talis back his talis, and the sun set, you get the avera of baltolim. So that should be a proof. If it really the talis, as long as you didn't pay for it, belongs to the tailor, so then why do you get the avera baltolim? It must be that you get the avera baltolim because we say ein umen koil b'shvach keli, and therefore it's really you hired this tailor to fix your talis, you didn't pay him, so you get the avera baltolim. So here's a clear raya to Rav Shesh's opinion. Answers the Gemara. Omar Rav Mari berei Rav Kahana. Rav Mari, son of Rav Kahana, said not necessarily it's a proof to not necessarily is it a proof to Rav Sheshes. It's talking about Bagardula de Sarbala. Talking about that there was no improvement to the talis. Actually, it was a downgrade to the talis. He softened the talis in a certain way that didn't add any improvement on the talis. And in that case, really, there was no way that that everybody agrees ain't umen koine b'shvach keli because there was no improvement to the talis. So the Gemara says, what do you mean? How could you give a talus to a tailor and there is no improvement? Why did you give it to him? Lirakuve, to soften it. So that's an improvement. In other words, sometimes if you dry clean something so much, it's nice in the short term, but in the long term, it's not a good idea. So sometimes you give the talus to a tailor to soften it. So you're right. In the long term, it's not a good idea. There is no improvement. But in the short term, there is an improvement because it's softened and makes it easier to wear. So the question is, so we're dealing with an uman that didn't make an improvement on the keli. So therefore, if he did make improvement on the keli, so then why would you be over the lav of loitalin? And says the Gemara, like tzricha, the reason is here the Bryce is not a proof because it's talking about the uman, the worker, was not a tailor. He was hired to trample on the talus. That's the way you'd soften it. And bacho bamasa, every time he tramples on it, he gets a little coin. So therefore, in this case, he's not making an improvement. He's just tramping on it, and that's like a preparation for another process. So he didn't make any improvements on this garment, and he was just a hired worker. If he's just a hired worker, so then you get of course, there's an avera of baltolan, but a contractor that made an improvement, it's possible to say that uman koina b'shvach keli, and therefore it's only a loan, and there would be no avera of baltolan. But be that as it may, remember this, Rav Sheshes said that even a contractor, a tailor, you hire him to make a suit from the wool that you gave him, if he gave you back the suit and you don't pay him right away, you get the avera of baltolan. Now we go to Amid Beis, Kuf Yud Beis Amid Beis, 112.2. Sechir Bizmanai Nishba V'Noita. Let's say the Mishnah said that during the period of time, the grace period, and the worker says, you didn't pay me. Let's say he worked during the day. So at nighttime, he says to the employer, you didn't pay me. The employer says, I paid you. So then the employees believe, and he swears, and he can demand payment again. So the Gemara says, "Sochir amai takne le'rabam mishtabah v'shakol." Why do we make the employee swear, and then we believe the employee, and he gets paid? Normally, in the Jewish law in Chumash, it says that the one that swears is the one, because he swore he's not going to pay. And here we find something opposite, that here the employee swears that he did not get paid, and he could get, and therefore he could get the payment. This is a great halacha. Probably it's a halacha l'Moshe Messinai. Frag the Gemara. What do you mean it's a halacha l'Moshe Messinai in the Torah? Hani hilchas ninu, hani tekanos ninu. An employee swearing is not a shvua in the Torah. There are 3 shvuas in the Torah, but this is not one of them. These are tekana d'Rabbanan that they said that if the employee would swear, we would believe him. So it's not a halacha l'Moshe Messinai. Elam Rav Yehuda Mashmuel takanas gedolah shana katana. These are great. This is a big takana they made, a big fix. Frag the Gemara gedolos machlal di katanas. Every takana that Chachamim make, every edict that the Chachamim make are big. What do you mean? There's big and small. Which means that it's a real it's a set takana that really uproots something in the Torah. Really, in a Torah, we never find somebody swear and collect. I swear you owe me money, and now you owe me money. You have to give me the money. That doesn't apply in the Torah. The one that swears is always the one that's not going to pay. But here, by the employee, they made the employee swear, and we will believe the employee. The employee is swearing and not even being proof that the balabayas owes him any money. We have a klal that if you want to pull money out of somebody, you have to bring proof. Here, we believe the employee with a shvua, and the Gemara is going to explain why. Shvua the balabayas, really, the swearing should be on the employer. They took away the right of swearing on the employer and put it onto the employee. The answer is because we need employees. Employees need to be able to know that they're going to get paid. So the Gemara says, because the employee needs to get paid, and therefore we're going to cause the balabayas to lose out. We're going to believe the employee. I mean, what kind of right are we giving to an employee? And says the Gemara, balabayas gufe nichele. Even an employer would want the mishtabeya socher v'shakel. He wants the employee to have this right to swear that he didn't get paid and collect. Why? So that he should be looked at as a nice employer, that he gives this right to the employees to swear if they didn't get paid. So people would want to work for this guy. So every employer wants this right to be on like a perk that's on the employee. Says the Gemara, wait a second, you can say it the other way around. An employee will want that the balabayas should be the one to do the swearing, so that the employee should be looked at as an easy employee. He's not the contentious guy always fighting that he didn't get paid when he did get paid. He says, let the employer swear. So you have svaras. Either way, who should be the one to swear? So the Gemara says, balabayas al kocha ogar. The the employer needs to hire more workers. So he wants the employee to do the swearing. So the Gemara says, Sachir nami bal korchi itagar. An employee wants to get hired again. So it's not clear why. So here is the bottom line. Ella, here is the main point. Balabayas, an employer, he's always busy. So he's not 100% sure that he paid or didn't pay. So therefore, an employee knows if he got paid or not. So therefore, he's more believable. The employee is more believable than the employer, because the employer is, has other things to being taken care of. So therefore, we believe the employee. So the Gemara says, then why do you make the employee swear? Let him not swear. Let him just say, you didn't pay me, and believe him. Answers the Gemara, we want to calm and we want to ease the mind of the employer, that, the employee just not, saying something. He's actually swearing that he didn't get paid. Says the Gemara of Anesav law be'edim, let us require that in order to pay an employee, you have to have witnesses there. Anytime you're going to make a payment to the employee, you make sure that there's witnesses there, that you're paying them. So that the Gemara says that's too much. That's too much of a bother. It's very hard to get Eidim when you're paying an employee. Says the Gemara of Anesav le miyakara, let's require that you should pay an employee in advance. That's the Gemara's thinking. So you don't run into this problem. The employee shouldn't start working until he gets paid. And says the Gemara, Shneim writes in Bahakafa. Nobody wants to get paid right away. The employee doesn't either want to get the money right away. He might lose it, or might spend it in the cafeteria. So he wants to get paid when he goes home, and the employer doesn't want to pay right away. So therefore, that's the way it's done. The employee swears he didn't get paid, and the employer has to pay. Says the Gemara, then let's have this rule also if they have an argument. How much was the agreed amount payment? Allah Matanya, why did we learn in a brisa? Umen, the employer says, Shtayim kitzatztili. The employee says that the wages were 2. But the employer says, Lo kitzatzti loch ela achas. I only agreed to pay you 1. Then the right is by the employer. But you're always telling me the right is by an employee. And here, if they have an argument, how much was the agreed amount salary? We give the right to the employer. Answers the Gemara. Everybody remembers how much the salary was agreed. So then we trust the employer. The only time we don't trust the employer is if he paid. Because he's busy. So therefore, there we would trust more the employee to say he didn't get paid, swear he didn't get paid, and collect. Says the Gemara, another 2 minutes. The Mishnah says the only time you believe the employee is, let's say he's supposed to get paid at night. So during the nighttime, he's believed. But after the night passes, then he doesn't have a right to swear and take. So therefore, in that case, once the night passes and the employee says the next day, I didn't get paid, we won't believe the employee anymore with a shvuah. Why not? Answers the Gemara, chazaka, because we have an assumption, that the employer certainly did not want to be over the vera of overnighting the wages, and therefore Therefore, he probably paid him. Says the Gemara, Bava Amr, but didn't you just tell me that a Balabai is tarred by Alifu? Didn't you tell me that the employer is busy? Maybe he forgot to pay his worker. So why do we say that no, after the Zman, after the period of time, after the night, we start believing the employer? And says the Gemara, as long as there's time to pay, we say the employer is not 100% sure if he paid. So therefore, we believe the employee. We go to Kufya Gimel Lamed Aleph. But once the employer had to pay, so he'll make sure that the time period that he's supposed to pay will not pass if he didn't pay. He puts it upon himself and remembers. And therefore, the employer will be believed more so than the employee after the grace period. Says the Gemara, why wouldn't you believe the employee? Will you say that the employee would want to get the avera of stealing? He's claiming that he wants to get paid twice. And says the Gemara, Hasam, over there by the employer, trei chazaka. Hacha, by the employee, chada kazaka. There's one assumption. Gabi balabayis, employer, ike trei chazaka, he has two strikes going for him. Chada, the in balabayis over mishum baltolim. He didn't want to get the avera of baltolim, and therefore he probably played his employee. And another reason is that the employee would have been a pain in the neck to get paid. So therefore, if a grace period passed and nothing went on, we believe the employer that he paid. Over here, but the employee only has one thing going on his side, saying that he didn't get paid, and therefore he has one chazaka. So therefore, we believe the employer, not the employee. The chazaka that he would not steal. That's the chazaka. But so therefore, the employer is more right than the employee after the grace period. Half a minute more, we get to the Mishnah. If there's witnesses that he made a claim, then then the employee could forever swear. He could swear even beyond the grace period. Wait a second, but the employee, what do you need Aiden for if the employee says he didn't get paid? Omarav Asi Shatavi Bismani. The employee has Aiden that he tried to request payment during the grace period. But maybe let us say that the employer paid him after he made the claim that he didn't get paid. Omar Abaye Shatavi Kozmani. At the end of the day, at the end of the time period where the employer should have paid, the employee went to aid him and said, "You should know that my employer did not pay me." So then, in that case, even beyond the grace period, will we believe the employee? Will you always believe the employee? We only believe the employee for another day. So if the employee went at the end of the nighttime and said to Adam, "You should know I didn't get paid from this employer," so then the employee will now be believed with a shvua for another 24-hour period to swear that he didn't get paid, and then he will get paid. But if 24 hours passed and he didn't swear, then beyond that, we're going to believe the employer. Okay, we'll stop over here by the Mishnah. We'll do that tomorrow.
Didn't you skip one